Okay, welcome everyone. This evening we are joined here by myself, Harira, Rohays, Julette, and Kris. We are from the course, Jesse Bazzul's course. It is called EC&I 842, Environment and Aesthetics. And we are here doing a podcast tonight as part of our final project for this class. We're super excited. We will be joined by one of our a very special guest sometime soon. But until then, we're gonna start our podcast and see where we can go until she's here. We're also beading tonight as part of kind of recreating our classroom activity that we did. Well, that was much nicer because a lot of us were in person, but that's okay. We can do this here. We will be covering a few topics from our course. We had a lot to discuss throughout our course, but we've chosen 4 different topics that we will be focusing on. The first one is sensory encounters. We had a lot to discuss there in our classroom. We will be discussing beading and walking pedagogy with our guest, and towards the end, if we have time, we will cover dark ecology. Oh, I think we have our guest is here. Rohays and Claire have previous acquaintances, and she's the one who introduced to us to Claire. Um, Hi, Claire.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Sorry. I'm just at my friend's house right now. I've been moving. I'm moving. I'm still in Regina, but it was a pretty busy day for me. So I'm glad this is going to be some downtime for myself just to share, and I'm excited to be here. Would you like me to introduce myself?
Yeah, awesome. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Tanse, everyone. My name is Claire Takanow, and I'm from the Okanese First Nation here in Treaty 4. But I do reside in Regina. And my Cree name, just to honor today, which is National Indigenous Language Day, or I guess just Language Day, Tanse Wasanakwan Takanow, Nitsigasan Okanese Ochinia. So again, I just introduced myself in Cree. Um, so I currently work in Regina and I serve a lot of youth at a youth development organization that's in North Central. So I get the chance to work with a lot of marginalized young people, and a lot of them being and urban Indigenous youth. So that's a little bit about my story. Um, I didn't know I got the questions. You might have to remind me of the questions as well. That's okay.
Okay. Okay, awesome. We're really happy to be happy that you joined us today. Thank you so much. I guess I'll do a quick intro for all of us here so you know exactly who is who. Right, and my name is Harira. I am attempting to moderate tonight's podcast, and I'm joined by my group. You know, Rohays. We have Juliette, Rohays, Kris, and we're all graduate students of the Faculty of Education at the University of Regina. This is our last course, so we're wrapping this up. Last project as well, almost done. And as you can see, we're all different backgrounds, and I think this project is going to be an opportunity for us to think more deeply about learning and then going beyond the traditional classroom settings and really experiencing and also listening, hearing from you is going to be super interesting. So we're exploring how learning happens through aesthetics and sensory encounters, and we're going to draw on a lot of Sharon Todd's work that we did in our classroom, alongside the Indigenous practices like beading and walking pedagogy. So, with you, I think we had a few questions that we've prepared. So, let's just pull those up and let's get right into it. So, we spoke a lot about beading in our classroom. We're actually actively beading right now as we're doing the discussion. We also did that as part of our classroom. Guys, show your stuff.
Yeah, let's see.
I think mine is very good. It's getting there, but yeah.
Oh, you're doing amazing. I love
Chris,
it.
show
The
yours. Come
Canadian,
on, don't be shy.
Jamaican flag.
There you go.
Yeah, you picked that up. Awesome.
Yeah. Wow, what an experience.
Yeah, so we kind of like recreating a classroom that we had where some of us joined in class and did it in person, some of us did it on Zoom, but everyone was together at the same time and beat it and spoke about what it means to us. For me, it was a new experience for a lot of us as well here, because I don't think we've beat it before. This is the first time that we're beating.
Yes.
So I would like to hear from you, Claire, how do you look at beading and why is it important in Indigenous communities?
I think for myself personally, I bead in a different way. So you guys, what you're doing right now, this is the stitch beading, okay? So again, the colors, they really share a story, and that's something that I want to get across that's so important to Indigenous worldview and Indigenous ways of knowing is the fact that everything has a meaning and everything is grounded in a story. And you can do that in so many ways. A lot of cultures across the world, especially Indigenous cultures, they practice that. They practice that storytelling and how they weave that into the arts and how they weave that um, into identity. So for myself, I feel like it's storytelling. It's an identity, just much so like the ones that you guys are practicing. Those tell a story, and I could already kind of get the gist that the Canadian flag, the Jamaican flag, merged together. That's creating kind of a unity, and it's telling a story to someone very special, and which is yourself. So when I get into like more of the Indigenous beading, you have to realize that there's so many nations across Turtle Island, and Turtle Island, as you're aware, is North America.
North
Um,
America. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so a lot of those designs are so old from even from down south, when they make their way up to um, to where we are here in Saskatchewan. Um, and our designs are so different. So for example, I do have some beads here that are some beadwork that I want to share. For example, like this right here, this design. I don't know if you could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
This
can.
design would be from more of like the Sioux people, so the Nakota, Dakota, Lakota. So they have really the shapes in their design and their beadwork, right? And then this is a piece of how you can identify what nation they're from. So for
Mhm.
example, you'll see this one, which is more so also from the States. See how they have like the black and the white. And so again, this might be like a crest of some sort. These are not my designs. And that's another thing too. I'll get into that. Just how designs are also important. It's almost like an heirloom, right? So again, these would be from a different nation. Um, and then again, like beadwork, we can adorn that by wearing them, right? Um, so I went to visit my grandma one time, and she's from Lebret, Saskatchewan. And as I don't know if you guys know where that is, but it's like an old French town. So they have a cathedral church there because a lot of it they practice Catholicism. And Dr. Archer, and the library is named after him at the University of Regina. And he helped write a book, and this book is probably from the 40s. And my grandma had this book. It was called The Village of Lebret. And there was always something in there that really like I always take into account for the way that I like to present myself. But basically, um, I want to say like a researcher who studied Indians, or and when I say Indians, it's only because back in the day we were called Indians. And in his this passage, he said the Indians like to adorn themselves with these colors, and they're very conceited and all of this stuff because that's how we were. We wanted to take pride with the colors, the designs. And again, those are passed down sometimes. Like I said, like these would be passed down designs, like heirlooms. So again, like it's a big part of your identity in that sense of um, just again like who you are, your family, your nation. And then there's just like as we go forward, there's so many indigenous artists who just are wonderful bead workers. And for myself, I feel like I want to be like that, but it takes a lot of time and patience, as you guys already know,
Yes.
since you've practiced
A
some
lot.
beading.
Yeah.
And that's a teaching. That's a teaching. And we'll get into that in a second too. But with our beadwork, we don't just bead with seed beads. So these would be seed beads. And a lot of times these beads are Eurocentric, meaning um, these were brought to us. So, but we have something called trading beads. You could find those down in the States. And so like we did have beads as well, and they would be like made probably from like bone or other natural resources. And it wasn't until like the Eurocentric when we were able to get really different beads like that. So these are seed beads. Um, so then I'll get into kind of other contemporary beadwork. So these are earrings. I love to wear earrings. I probably have like over 50 pairs of earrings, and I'm so grateful because I get them gifted, and I love to support my family who bead. So, for example, this is horsehair, and these are earrings. So these are so beautiful to me because my cousin made them for me, and they're special to me because my late father, his name was Wild Horses, and my father passed away. So like everyone, they know that like my dad's name was Wild Horses, and I love horses. So I have horsehair earrings. So that's one of the pairs. And then I have another pair of horsehair earrings.
Oh, that's beautiful.
hmm And then
Lovely.
my mother is a skilled beater. Like she's so skilled. My bead, I'll show you the earrings that I made. So, and we don't only just like bead with seed beads or or anything like that. We usually also bead with dentalium. So dentalium, these are dentalium.
What, I'm sorry, what is dentalium?
Dentalium is like a shell. So,
Oh, okay.
um, like if you go to the West Coast, you can get the shells from
Okay.
they'll go down there and they kind of like they grow kind of like how would I say it? Like they're just shells and they grow upwards. If you have a chance, go
Yeah.
look that up, dentalium, and you'll see how they grow. But they're ethically sourced. And so again, if you look at our beadwork, and this is like even for Cree women, and like how we adopted these in our styles too is by trading. So if you look, you'll see women with like the breastplates that are like full of shells like this.
Mhm.
Um, I had other earrings as well. I forgot them, but they're basically elk tooth. So we even bead with bones like that. So elk tooth. I have earrings that are elk teeth. I have earrings that are like two bulls and they're wolf hair. So we get really, really creative with it. And again, it shares a story, right? And I and sometimes even with designs or regalia, etc., those often come to us in dreams as well. So, for example, I had a dream. My cousin was gifting me a pair of earrings, and a couple weeks later, she gifted me these ones. They weren't the ones in my dream, but I was still so very grateful that, um, again, like she gifted me earrings. So beautiful. These ones are just beads. These ones are just simple to make. I can make these. I call them danglies. And then these are the ones that I made. These are easier for me because it's like, again, you're not like sitting there,
Yeah.
stitching beads. Like that takes a lot of patience. These ones are more fun for me. So you see, like I have a little bit of dentarium on the ends of them. And then I just have cute little rope beads. That's
How
on
much time does it take for you to make one
one
pair?
pair of these. This probably takes me about 40 minutes
Yeah.
to make
Wow.
Yeah.
because you're going up and then you want it to in like again like it's a teaching. So for example, and this is also goes back to like even Métis people, because the Métis people, that's how we started getting more florals. So I wish I could explain like, um, I wish I had an example, but you guys probably maybe heard about the Métis floral artists. So that's how we started getting florals in our Cree beadwork, is because when the Métis people came, and we all know Métis people are French and Cree descent, so they're Michif, and they're like they call them the flower beadwork people. So you can identify again like if that's a Métis person because they have the florals. Um, but again, that was adopted because we know that obviously like Europeans, they have a lot of florals in their in their accessories. So we adopted that into our beadwork. So that's a little bit of a history of some of the beadwork and the stories. And again, like that's why it's important to me that, and also I feel like whenever I wear earrings, like I feel so empowered. I feel like I can walk in somewhere and I have my earrings on, and people are like, "Oh, I love your earrings," and I'm able to share like, for example, like the story I just told you. about my father, right? So
Yeah.
to me, it's so important that that I just have these earrings, and they're more than just earrings; they're like art. So for me, it's important that I honor that and I take care of my earrings, and you know, I'm really proud um, to be able to wear these pieces, especially when, as we know, because of the Indian Act, we weren't allowed to practice that. We weren't allowed to be adorned in our earrings and stuff like that, especially through the residential schools as well. We weren't allowed to really um, wear earrings or ceremonial garments or just regalia. So it's almost like a resurgence as well that you see it more and more. And yeah, so um, yeah.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
Yeah, and
Really, I
Claire,
love those
I can
designs
see
of it.
those are some beautiful
Yeah,
beaded piece, and that
yeah.
is telling me that beading is actually an important practice in the indigenous culture. But I would like to know, how can non-indigenous persons respectfully support the preservation of beading traditions?
I think again, it just goes back to just that basic respect, right? I I work with a lot of non-Indigenous people, and they always want to know if they can wear earrings, like beaded earrings, and I'm always like, of course you can, but it goes back down to being respectful of them, much so like how I am respectful with my earrings, and it's very important for us to support artists and to share their stories, and it's okay to be humble. It's okay to know that nothing is ever perfect. It's a lesson. Even if, you know, that's how I feel in my beadwork. Sometimes I'm like, oh, like it's all loose, and like we, like Indigenous people, we like, again, we share stories, but we also share a lot of humility. So we like to joke around, and sometimes it'd be like, you know, we'll just make jokes like, oh, your beadwork is loose and things like that. So it's important that we learn those lessons, and it's also important that as an Indigenous person, I feel like it's I don't want to say my duty, but I want to be able to let someone understand, and I want to be open with someone if they don't understand. And again, it's just like, you could be curious, but just be respectful. And I think it's also good to uplift Indigenous people with their beadwork, support beadworkers, and again, just try and understand that beading is a long practice. It's preserved in such a beautiful way. Even if you go to the museum, I don't know if any of you guys been to the Royal Saskatchewan,
Saskatchewan,
yeah,
Mm.
yes,
and you see
yes.
the
There's a lot
beadworks.
of stuff
The
there.
beautiful
Yeah,
beadwork is there.
yeah.
Just really blow me away. Really beautiful.
Yes,
And we've also incorporated that on clothes and
yes.
shawls and those I'm sorry, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're like covered like about this much and they're like super
Mhm.
warm and got so many designs going on.
Okay, yeah, like a
Yeah,
shawl, or yeah, like a shawl or covering or
yeah,
something like that. Oh, even on saddles, you know, and
yes,
again, it's such a strong piece of identity. For example, like if I had a horse and they would be the saddle, and maybe it would have my design in it, like, because then that's my horse. Um, but again, like a lot of these are passed down designs. Like these dentalium earrings, like this style of earrings have been around for like so many years before
yeah.
before European contact, because they were all naturally sourced from the lands. So it's very beautiful to honor in that way, and again, just be respectful, I think. And I think that's with any culture that you want to dive into and learn more in depth. And that's the thing too, it's not a surface level. It's like you actually have to like look at it in depth, and honor and practice just patience and learning.
Okay, so what I'm getting from that, Claire, is that you're saying, like, for myself as not even a Canadian, Jamaican, so you're saying, like, as it relates to beading, and if I want just to embrace that culture, one of the main thing is to just to be respectful, understand that it's telling a story. I can add my story,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and just to, basically be respectful of the culture, treat it with respect, and so on.
And also
Yes.
be humble.
Yeah, and be
Patient.
humble with your words. Exactly. Nothing, and that's the
Okay.
teaching. Beating, it teaches you patience, and it teaches you that nothing is perfect. Nobody is perfect. That's unachievable to be perfect. So, and also we have a saying too. Well, the Métis people, they have a saying, and it's called, I can't remember, but it's for example, if you're doing a beadwork and then you see that there's a bead that's not supposed to be where it's meant to be, and the Métis people, they say, well, it's meant to be there. It's meant to be there. That bead is meant to be there for a reason. You might look at it like, oh no, like that color is not supposed to be there, and the Métis people, they're like, no, that was supposed to be there.
Supposed to be there.
And then also, we have something called bead soup. And basically, like, if you look at bead artists, like, they'll have their beads all like in one kind of container or something. Because, like, again, like, if you have a bunch of beads, you'll get them mixed up. So then we call it bead soup. And then you can make stuff with your bead soup. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading about the bead soup. I remember coming across the beading table, and what else was it again? I wanna beading is medicine. Yes,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
beading is
good
medicine.
medicine. And a word I'll teach with you guys is mio. Um, what is it now? It's Mio Muskegee. Mio Muskegee means good medicine. Mio Muskegee means good
Meal,
medicine.
Muskegee, good
Hmm.
medicine.
And you share good medicine when you're beating. You even like laughter. Like I love to like especially during the holidays. Like me and my mom, we will sit and watch something on Netflix, and we'll take our time. We'll just bead, and then maybe I'll get something tangled. I'll be like, "Mom, fix it for me," and she's like, "Okay, bring it here." So it's even allowing us to be together, and hold that space, and it's more than just a craft when you look at it in that sense. And I think like every culture has those special moments of bonding, with your loved ones, and yeah, it's just a special practice.
This is really amazing. I think
It
what
is.
I'm getting is also how I'm viewing it is also how you guys are preserving the culture. It is so important for it to pass down all these generations. So not to forget because every beading, like you said, even the design has meaning to it. You guys are using bones, you guys are using there's also the horsehair, I believe. And everything
Right.
tells a story and it's so beautiful. And I feel like if people are not doing what you're doing, eventually it's just gonna die down and all the sacrifices, all the suppression and
Mhm.
everything that went down in the history, colonization, it's all going to be forgotten. And it's so important to make sure that we're actively, mindfully making sure that the youth, we're not just teaching them beading, but we're telling them stories of, you know what, this represents this, and this is how it happened, and why this matters to us so much.
Mhm.
Which makes me think though, so you work at the youth development organization. At the organization, how do you guys look at beading at the organization? Is that something you guys do? Is how do you guys incorporate beading in the organization with the youth?
So, previously I worked for this other organization, and we had a space called, um, it was called, what the heck was it called now? It was like had something to do with like reclaiming and resurgency and being rooted in, just power. And every week we did something that was kind of forgotten, or like a beating practice or regalia making. But that class was to make us, again, have some resurgency and to relearn things that was lost. So we would even have an elder in the space, and they would tell their stories. But anyways, getting back to the point, I was a part of that group, and I was able to invite another youth that I work with closely because, I told her about it, and she's like, "Oh, I want to be a part of something like that." So, again, funding allowed for her to come and join us, and it was powerful because then we both began to become teachers, and she's a lot younger than I am. She's like, I'm like her mentor, but she's also my mentor. And long story short, we're like, let's bring that here to Regina. Like, let's bring that to North Central. And so we were able to, get a bunch of donations for beads, and we were able to book a space. And now that's her space. So it's called Beading with Emily. So she's this young girl, and she'll have other young girls in the community come, and she just sits with them, and I've been beading longer than her, and her beadwork is just top notch. Like, just to see that that was a gift that she could pick up, and like that's another thing I want to say. Like, with anything, like you have to practice, and sometimes it's not for you. And like as much as I want to say like, oh, like I can do this, I probably can't, but I can do something else with beading, and I can do this, but I can't do this. And but long story short, like she can do this, and she's taken the craft and she's became a teacher and she facilitates that space, and I just support her. And we'll have aunties, like we'll have other even non-indigenous girls. They'll come and sit with us and they'll come bead, and we allow them, and it's just a space where we all can just be together and make beautiful things and laugh and listen to music and eat good food, and that takes place once a month at the
Yeah.
center. And yeah, it's been really beautiful, and it's
Well, that's
awesome.
interesting. That's interesting you say that about the non-Indigenous people. We actually have a question sitting right here about how non-Indigenous students and how you think they view or experience beading when it is introduced in classrooms or just introduced to them. How do you think the non-Indigenous students view it or experience
I
beading?
think again, it goes back down to like curiosity or questions of being like, can I do this? Is this allowed? Or, maybe they're waiting for the invite, but I feel like Indigenous people were always like, don't wait for an invite, just jump in, but be respectful
Something.
again, right? Be
Yeah.
respectful. And I think for them, they really view it in a way of a different way to learn about Indigenous people, and in that sense, they uphold their their um their their practice and the promise. Again, when we wrote treaties in 1885 and Treaty 4, something that was important was that we also teach the Europeans or the French or whoever came to be on these lands. We invited them to also learn our ways. But what
Mm.
happened was they only wanted us to learn their ways, and we're going to simulate your ways. So I think for sure it's always so nice to see young girls, because I also do I do ribbon skirts. So I
Oh,
always,
yeah.
yeah, I always
Please
want to
tell us
invite.
about that. Yeah, we read in an article that Rohays shared about the ribbon skirt. Can you tell us a little about that? Where did
Yes.
that come from? In
Okay.
how did that come about?
Um, 1 second. My phone might die. So if I lose you, I'll have to jump back on. I'm just like, oh, I think I might have left my charger. But that being said, um, I was able to help out with this ribbon skirt library. And for me, it was important because, again, when I came to the city and I noticed a lot of urban Indigenous youth who were disconnected to the teachings, again, like wearing ribbon skirt, that's also a practice, and that's storytelling. But those
Mm,
garments were used for us to practice our culture, practice our ceremonies. And again, like even the designs, same thing. They all mean something special, and it's important to recognize that. So that being said, um, I was I'm always in awe to see girls like, and again, non-Indigenous girls come into the space and they're like, I want to make a ribbon skirt today, Claire. And I'm like, yep, come on in. And then I see them at the round dance, or and again, that's like I don't want to say it's a key, but it's something to for them to open up to and learn these ways and feel connected. And again, I think this is something like less than 10 years ago that wasn't happening.
yeah.
And so it's empowering, and it's rooted in again reconciliation. It's rooted in um reciprocity, and there's just so much beautiful teachings within that as well.
So Claire, is it okay like for non-indigenous peoples to just like wear a ribbon skirt? Like if I see one in a store, I like it, I just go ahead, purchase it and just wear it for whatever occasion I feel like I want to wear it to.
Um, I want to, yeah, absolutely. I want to say yes, but other Indigenous people might have different view. And
Mm.
and but the thing is, I think it depends on what you're gonna wear it for. I think it depends on kind of the content you want. Like, please do, especially for you guys around the room. If you guys are gonna go to a ceremony of some sort, please wear a ribbon skirt, and um, you'll probably be respected a lot because then you're also honoring the ceremony space. And
Okay.
that question comes to me a lot. Of course you can, but I would say don't wear it to like a bar or a club or something. Like
Yeah.
there's a special meaning to it,
Yes,
right?
I
But
get
And
really
it.
respectful to it, right?
Okay.
yes.
Comes back to respect.
Yeah.
hmm And you can wear them like whenever I see a non-Indigenous person wearing a ribbon skirt, I'm always like, I love that. I love to see that, and that's important for us to share that moment together. And I learned how to make ribbon skirts from my mom. Like again, my mom, she's an excellent seamstress and her beadwork is amazing. And she's just like the best. Like she got the gifts. And I always like someday that's gonna be passed down to me.
Yeah.
I mean in a lot of ways, but definitely time and practice and etc.
Right. Awesome. Kris, you would want to move on to the next topic. I think you had a question. Do you want to shoot?
Okay, Kris, I just want to say thank you. I'll go back to your first idea about colors and materials it's a representation of identity. When we started bidding in class, I actually found myself wondering about the origins of bidding because it reminded me of the many indigenous people, communities in my 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 my, my country, the Philippines, where identity is often expressed through the colors and also through how the colors are arranged in their clothes and in their beadworks. But I wanted to go to the next topic, which is about the walking pedagogy. I want to throw a question to you. It's like, what role has walking played in indigenous history and culture?
Mm. See, that's a good question too, because I looked at that question, I'm like, do you mean physically walking?
Yes, we did the
Okay,
physical walking. So we're talking
okay,
about
for sure.
the walking,
For sure. And again,
physical
like
walking.
there's so many different like even walking like for me, like I walk in two worlds, which is kind of a metaphor. I walk in a non or I don't even want to say I walk in a Western worldview and I walk in my indigenous worldview. So that's like walking in two worlds and you'll often hear that. But I think walking, like physically walking was important for us because again you're connected back to the land, you're connected back to the earth, and we do practices called grounding, and a lot of people they practice this as well, where you go out when you're feeling disconnected and then you go out and
Yes.
uh, you're connecting back to the land, and and I think that's such a powerful practice too. And again I think like walking physically is important to us, like because I mean we walked, like we used to walk. Then there's also sadness to it because the Trail of Tears, and you guys are probably aware of what happened there when they imprisoned Indigenous people and they made them walk, and a lot of them starved on that walk. And um, even thinking about walks, you probably see MMIW, so that's even used as a tool um, to advocate for injustices for Indigenous people in Turtle Island. Um, Back home, we do something called a smudge walk. And I don't know if you guys are aware of what smudging is, but smudging is another practice that we use to cleanse our bodies, our minds, our hearts, and our spirits. We use various medicines. But back home, we have something called a walk, and we have sage. And so, sage is one of the medicines that we use to smudge. And we physically will start at the end of one community, or sorry, the end of the maybe the end of the community, and we'll walk as a people, and we'll sing, we'll dance, and but most importantly, we'll pray, and we'll have that sage burning and cleansing the whole community, and that's to rid in any bad energy, that's to rid in, and also not just ridden, but bring in prosperity, bring in guidance, bring in, um, good energy, and bring in that mio miskiki. And so I think that is also powerful to be able to walk. Um, and and that's all I could really say to that. But yeah, walking is powerful in any way that you look at it. It's not just physically walking. It's like how, mentally walking and spiritually walking, and I think for sure like the most important part is just where you walk and how you walk with yourself and who you
Claire, can
walk.
you just okay, I'm sorry, you weren't finished?
Oh, no, no. And I was just gonna say the last point, and it's important to see who you walk with.
Hmm. Yes.
Hmm.
Can you just say a little bit more about what you meant by walking in two worlds?
So, for example, like in a way, because we're all indigenous, right? You're indigenous to Jamaica. I can't remember who the you're from Philippines, and our moderator there, she's from where are you from?
Malaysia.
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 I was born in
So
Pakistan.
you're born in Pakistan. So
Yeah.
like just that idea, there is a way where we grew up, all of us, we were rooted in culture and we have our own traditions. And we learned that way. We walked in that way, or people, our ancestors walked in that way. And we never forgot that because we still walk in those ways by honoring that. And then when we're here in Canada or any, I guess, I don't want to like any colonized country,
Mm,
basically you have to learn their ways too. And
yeah.
you're walking in the two worlds, but you're still remembering who you are. But you're like for me, like, I'm very thankful for my position, but um I had to learn this Western way of life. Like I had to learn about time. So colonial constructs I had to learn and adapt to. And that's my way of living too. So I'm able to merge the two together so I can live in this good life and I can teach other people like yourselves or teach non-Indigenous people. Most importantly, also teach my own. And I'm a mother. So even that too, like, I'm always so proud that I'm able to teach my son about these practices that were lost. And my late father, he went to residential school and he obviously like he didn't survive that. Like that was something that was painful for him. So
Mm.
in a sense, like I'm like that just happened to my father. And then I'm the generation that's kind of breaking that curse and trying to of just the oppression of the traumas. And I'm just turning that intergenerational trauma into intergenerational love with my son.
Thanks,
Okay.
Claire. I like those points, but I'm thinking you may be able to give us some practical examples given that you're a teacher and we are all teachers here, but we would like to know how can Indigenous walking pedagogy be used in teaching? How do you think we can incorporate it in teaching?
So I think again, it's important to shift how we think about our learning, right? And how things are we're always inside. We're always inside. We're always kind of in this construct of, again, like a building. We have to sit, we have to conform, we have to be like, no, you have to sit down, like, and for me, it took a lot for me to understand because I have ADHD. And for me to learn, I understood like I cannot physically sit somewhere. I cannot sit somewhere too long. I cannot sit at a desk. And I'm sorry, just to your point too, I'm actually not a teacher. I am a program and youth development lead. So it's some similar to teaching, right? But
Yeah.
I'm not like a classroom kind of person because people are always often telling me become a teacher. And as much as I want to, I think I'm just better off doing it in this way because it works for me. So I think how you can bring it inside is, um, you go outside. Don't try to just stay inside. I mean, obviously, right now it's winter, you want to stay inside, but also there's so much land-based learning and resources that you can do. Again, there's one called Take Me Outside. Okay, that's an organization. You guys should look into that. It's called Take Me Outside. And I got to go to um, Lake Louise for a conference, and there was an indigenous teacher there, and he taught us all of these really cool indigenous games to try. So physical activity is so important too for our minds, for our bodies, right? So again, like you could take them outside to learn about medicines. Regina has a biodiversity reserve. So if you want to contact Regina Nature, like they'll take you out there to go tour, and they have all these species that came back to life. Like look into it, like it's pretty amazing. Um, and then, so I think for sure, like just opening up your mind to wanting to learn what's outside because it's just as important. So I think that's a huge part for teaching is, and even when I think about my own people, I wasn't taught. in a classroom right away. I didn't actually go to a town school until I was about in grade 4 because I grew up on the reserve, and I remember those young, my younger years were the best for me because again, when you're young, those early year development, like you're like a sponge. And I always
Yeah.
remember like going to sweat lodge ceremonies, going to the teepee, and elders are talking. And I remember I was pulling out the grass. I was being impatient, and with my little ADHD mind, I'm trying to sit with the other kids, and I'm pulling out grass, and the elder stops and he said, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "You're hurting Mother Nature." And then he told me a lesson. He didn't like get mad at me, like he just wanted to like give that opportunity to me to learn. So now when I see another kid that's pulling the grass out for no reason, I'm like, takes me back to that moment.
Mm.
But it's so important to even bring that into the classroom. There's so many beautiful ways now that you can, right? Even when you learn about the buffalo, like those teachings are important because they're all rooted on being outside and being one with the land, and just encourage the opportunity to go outside or to bring it inside the classroom. Yeah, and there's always so many opportunities if you just open up your mind to it.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Guys, I just wanna build on that question about teaching indigenous ways. There's high possibility that we foreigners here would end up teaching as foreign teachers in Canada, and as foreign teachers working on the treaty land, how can we bring walking pedagogy into our classrooms in a way that is respectful and also responsible? I think the word here is appropriation, like
Yeah.
without appropriating indigenous practices or probably claiming relationship to this land that is not even ours. Where's the line between being genuinely inspired by indigenous ways of knowing and overstepping? How do we draw that line?
Again, I'd say just don't be scared to like learn and reach out like what you guys did today. You brought in someone indigenous to kind of open up your perspective on it. I would say you have someone indigenously leading it. Okay, have being indigenous informed as well is also important, but just because you're indigenously informed doesn't mean you're indigenously led. And for example, like if you were to connect to an elder, if you want to bring an elder into the classroom, as you guys know, you have to follow the proper protocol, which is what you use with tobacco, and you're asking them, and tobacco too, like that's something that we've been using for years, and that's a powerful medicine. You know, follow those guidelines. But for us, I would say to always just go back and honor, like, even when we do a treaty land acknowledgement, that's important. And, always kind of go back to like the idea, like, especially we're here in Saskatchewan, we would say, like, the Cree people did this, and always acknowledge the first people of the lands. And I think for sure you're not appropriating in that way. And again, um, you're always gonna learn. You're always like life
Yeah.
is you're always gonna learn a learner every day for your life. So I think for sure you guys know what you're doing, and I also feel too because
Exactly.
you guys are indigenous too to your land, so it's a little bit
Yeah.
difficult for me to. But when I work with non-indigenous, like a lot of my colleagues, they're non-indigenous, like they're from European descent, and they come to me all the time. So I think they just got lucky to have me most of the time. But and they're humble about it, right? They're not trying to be a know-it-all, like in that sense, like,
Mm.
and that goes back to the humility. Just if you make a mistake, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. You didn't mean it. Have respect, have integrity, right? And
Mhm.
those are important values that you have to carry in your life and in your heart as you go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Claire. I know we've kept you, I think, more than half an hour now, or almost half an hour.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think we're gonna wrap up. Guys, it's okay if we have any missed question, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so
okay. But I think
yeah.
as she is going, can you turn your camera back on or will it drain your battery?
Hold on. I'm just in my car right now because I left
Oh,
my block
yeah.
at work.
So we
Yeah.
can say goodbye to you properly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Claire, for being here. Honestly, every time I have a conversation with anyone, with your background, with Indigenous information, it's always so enlightening because I feel like we're coming from such blind backgrounds with this new information about the Indigenous land and their way of knowing. And this entire course has been so informative. And then having you here, I knew I was gonna learn something new. And walking into worlds is super interesting. I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna read that
Yes,
about that. Thank you so
that's
much for
my
being
main
here.
takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Claire.
Thank
And
you,
for someone so
Claire.
young, you
Yeah.
seem to have so much knowledge.
Um,
I like the way how you walking into worlds, you've embraced your culture because I'm sure that there are indigenous young people who are not necessarily embracing the culture, but there've got to be people like you embracing it, passing it on, teaching the younger generations, and that's just so awesome. It has just been great to have you here and learn from you.
Right. Thank you
Mm,
so much.
Thank
thank you.
you, Claire, for accepting the invitation. We'll talk.
Yes, Nonaskoman, which means thank you. I really
Oh,
Now
thank
appreciate
that's
you
you
come
guys.
guys.
on.
Nonaskoman, yes. I hope you
And
guys
that's
enjoy your evening. Stay warm. It's still cold out there. But
Yeah.
yeah. And if there's anything else you need from me, just reach out and I'm always happy to teach others.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you. Really
take
appreciate
thank
it.
care.
Thank you.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Dang,
Wow. That
that
was
was good.
interesting.
Yes, it
Very
was.
good. Very informative.
I know.
Yes.
I was just like jotting down stuff that she was saying, and she was moving so fast. I was like, come on, faster, write
Yes.
faster. Okay,
She's got a
interesting.
wealth of
So,
information.
yeah, what
Yeah.
did you guys think? Give me your 2 cents on this. What do you guys think? What did you learn?
I found it to be like really enlightening. She is such a young person.
Mm,
And I was like blown away when she said up until what age? Up until grade 4, she was
mm,
at home on the reserve, just learning, and I think that's just so awesome. Learning in the traditional ways.
yeah,
I think that's awesome for any set of people, any individual group of people who just want to just teach the next generation. It does not always have to be Eurocentric. I think we
for
put so
sure.
much pressure on our kids at a young age to learn in a particular way. So I found that really, good. I enjoyed the whole presentation. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
I agree with Julette. I enjoyed her presentation, but what's amazing, I spoke with her at work, but what really amazes me is that she's so young, but has such a wealth of knowledge in Canada
Mm.
Indigenous culture. Seeing such a young person so knowledgeable in that area is really
I think that too, because of her experiences. I mean, she told us about her grandfather. She also mentioned about her late father being in the residential schools, and I guess with that kind of experience and background, you're bound to get into this and learn from whatever that happened, all that happened in the past. I really found the grounding very interesting, where
Yeah.
she spoke about how you feel disconnected and then you go out for walks and feel like she spoke about Trail of Tears. I unfortunately haven't come across that, but I think she mentioned something about where they made Indigenous people walk. Um,
Yes. And
and
then they died. A
and
lot
they
of them
died of
died on that walk.
starvation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. So I
I
think
think
this was
uh,
yeah.
wanted to pick up like her last idea, like us. Um, there's a difference between being knowledgeable and being led. Um, sometimes there's so many things that rush us to the point that we take things on our own. But although, yes, we're knowledgeable, but the experience that we can provide probably to our students will be different if somebody is leading us and we bring our students to that very individual who is leading us with regards to our learning of the indigenous knowledge and ways.
Yeah, and also what I got from her is that like in indigenous culture, they have particular ways of doing things. So you can be knowledgeable in the area, but you don't have, say, for example, the expertise to carry out a certain practice. And then if you do it in a particular way, it can offend the indigenous people. And we
Respect,
have
right?
to,
Yeah.
yes, we have
Respect.
Mm.
to, and yes, we have to ensure that we do it in a respectful way. So we might need to get an elder.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that also reminds me of in Malaysia, they have a lot of indigenous communities, a lot of indigenous communities. And even then, they have such pretty dresses, and then they speak their own languages, and then every state has a different indigenous community. And I remember having the same conversation with one of my teachers where they said that we will expose you and help you learn all the non-indigenous people, especially the foreigners who are super interested in this. But we don't want to. Let's just please take it with respect because this goes far for us, right? I think that's what she meant as well. Okay, we're gonna be back. We're just going to transition now towards our other themes, and we'll be back. All right, welcome back, everyone. Now we will be moving towards our next theme for tonight, which is aesthetic and sensory encounters. Now we have discussed a lot about this in our classroom. I think from my understanding, what Sharon Todd was really talking about is asking us to rethink what learning actually is. So instead of seeing it as something that happens only through thinking or absorbing information, she showed us how learning happens through encounters, through moments where we engage with the world and through our bodies and our senses. And I think these engagement, it's not passive. So we're not just observing, we're affected, we're shaped, and even transformed by experiences through different ways, right? Their touch, movements, sound, emotion. So in that sense, something learning becomes more relational and lived rather than something just intellectual. So my question to you guys is, in your view, how do you think Sharon Todd defines educational encounter, and why does she see encounters as central to learning, or why do you see these encounters central to learning?
I think one of the things that I get from her is that she wants us to consider education as not something that happens to the kids, to the children, but happens with them. And so they are part of the entire experience. I remember thinking about the whole idea of encounters and the fact that every day we have encounters, and every time we move on from an encounter, bits of that encounter goes with us, and we take that into our learning space. So as an educator, I take my encounters into the teaching learning situation, and my students are coming with their encounters into the teaching learning situation. So what I need to do is to create a space where uh, um, uh, Claire said, walking in two worlds, create a space where the encounters can meet, and I can learn from my kids and they can learn from me. And it's not just this one Eurocentric space where I've got to finish a curriculum uh, and there's only one way of learning and knowing, you know. So I think the whole idea is that we are experiencing the learning through the senses, through not just, as she puts it, not just touching, but being touched, touch and be touched. I came away with that. I kind of just love that that phrase, and it has really caused me to look at my teaching. Am I touching the students, not just physically, you know, not just emotionally, but on every plane.
Yeah, and in her article, The Touch of the Presence, she explains that encounters are the very stuff out of which not only education, but ourselves and the world are made. And so she describes educational encounter as more than just an interaction. It is a movement where we come into contact with something that actually affects us. It is relational, sensory, and embodied. And when I think about this, I connect it back to my experience growing up in Jamaica, where I was able to be in the outdoors, be near the river, or even just walk into school. And those moments, those moments of being outside, they were encounters that really shaped how I understood the world.
Right. And as you said, Rohays, it's not just um, simply absorbing content, but creating what she referred to as possibilities for becoming. We don't know there are endless possibilities.
Mhm.
When we look out at a sea of students, a class of students, endless possibilities, of what they could become.
And I also think, as Claire mentioned earlier, that is why in the indigenous culture they really promote land-based learning. So students really go out, they use their senses, they get that encounter, that experience. So it is best as educators we try to move away from just the norm of students receiving knowledge, but have them really experiencing it.
Right.
Yeah, I think another idea that Sharon throws there is like we're not just in the world observing it, but rather we are of the world, like putting ourselves out there. I remember our science teacher, when I was in high school, like we're talking about ecology instead of just experimenting ideas from the book, trying to, imagine things that are happening out there in the environment. He brought us to rice field, to the sugarcane field, and that's where we experience the world, not from the books, but from actually, being there, being in the world, not just kind of an observer of the world.
Yes, Chris. And if we should if we should unpack what you just said, it's just gonna touch on so many of the other areas that we met in the course, walking pedagogies,
Right.
going out and walking, and then also looking
Yeah.
at dark ecology, which I suspect our moderator is gonna take us to. And then this is just what I loved about how all the topics just tied together. We can't
They
unpack
connect,
it.
yes.
We can't
Exactly.
unpack it all here today, wish we could.
I think it's interesting when you said about these encounters being so it's wide, isn't it? It's not just in the classroom. There is, of course, the classroom encounters that happens in learning. Then we've got the encounter with the environment, where we had Claire talk about walking outside and feeling, hearing things around us. I think even beading is a form of
An
educational
encounter.
encounter,
Yeah.
where you can feel textures and there's repetitive movements, but these movements tell stories and they have a meaning and you learn through your body. And then there's this learning through senses, right? And encounters with others that we do on everyday basis. So interesting. Anything else you guys want to add to this question, or should we move on to the next one?
I think we could move on.
Okay, so since I mentioned about learning through senses, why do you think that Todd insists that the senses, especially touch, are essential to understanding education today?
I think before I even think of answering that, I touch a little bit on what Claire said, that up until about grade 4, she was just learning from the elders,
Yeah.
you know, and I
Also
think,
pulling the grass thing, right?
yes,
You can help
and I
yourself.
think a lot of our students don't get that experience, especially for us back in Jamaica, even at 2 years old.
Mm.
Our kids are going off to school in a uniform, sitting at a desk with a pencil. They're not even going there to sing and learn and just play with colors. There's actually a lesson plan for 2 and 3 year olds. And I think we do them an injustice, you know. I think there is so much more for learning to take place, that learning can take place through the senses. And I think to answer your questions, Harira, it's not just about the physical learning in a space. But coming off of the first question, the encounters and all of the senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, moving, all of these are forms of touch.
Mm.
You're touched by the smell. You're touched by the sound of the wind. You're touched by the smell of the ocean. And all of this, it speaks to some parts of you, and you know the experiences that you take away, as I said before in the first question, it's helping you to become who you are. um but I look at our relationship with like curriculum, classroom, the technology. um these are not just it, you know there are other ways, and I think that is what she was trying to get at. The indigenous idea behind education is that there are other ways of learning and knowing. There's just not just this one uh, particular US-centric way.
Yes, you're so right, Julette. And I think that is why she mentioned in her article, and that point stood out when I read it, that what we know cannot be divorced from our living in, with, or through the world. Because she's arguing that education is focused too much on thinking and not enough on feeling and sensing. So students are missing out on that. And that is why she reminds us that learning is always tied to our lived physical experiences. So we don't just want to learn with our minds, we also want to do so through our bodies.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, with a question like of all the senses, why touch is really, really important. Like, I mean, among the senses, Todd here gives touch a very special place. For her, touch is not just simply one sense among five. It is actually the underlying logic of all the senses, of all the sensing thing that something things that we are doing. So every time we see, every time we hear, every time we smell, like something, we are in a form of contact with it. So that's where touching comes in. We're touching and being touched by the world around us. So this is what I think she means by the phrase touching and being touched by, which runs throughout the book. That's what we read all throughout the book.
Yeah. And when you think of an encounter, that just the definition of the word, it means like coming face to face with something or someone, and for using that in an educational sense, or applying that to an educational scenario or so, it's like, as teachers, we have to just let go. And it's not going to be easy,
Yeah.
because we have been so schooled in the way how we learned and the way how we were taught to teach, but we have to be able to we have to understand this, and then we have to be able to provide another kind of learning space for our students.
Yeah, and as Claire mentioned too, we have to have the mindset to like be willing to make change or accept change, because that will pose the problem. And I am remembering occasions when I would take my students outdoor for some exploration activities or stuff like that, and they would be so intrigued, they're interested, as opposed to being sitting down in the classroom. And when I read Todd's article, I realized that this particular experience, it is not distant. So they are not distant. They're really into the experience. It is
Mhm,
immediate, and it is real.
mhm.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how we say on an everyday basis that something happens and someone said something and I was touched by what they said, even though there might not be physical touch present there,
Right.
but you felt touched.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful concept, and I think that we learned from the Todd's reading. I think we're good to move on to the next question. Next theme, which is dark ecology. This was an interesting one that came towards almost the end of our towards the last few readings that we did. Um,
Thanks.
I I think to start off, before we ask a question, dark ecology and the idea of detective and criminal is where we're heading towards the first question. There's this, I think it's complicated how we understand our relation to the environment, right? It's suggested that we are not separate observers. We're trying to fix ecological problems, and we're actually deeply causing them at the same time as well. And this shift from identity, from being innocent or outside to nature to actually being entangled within it, I think that's where we become aware of the damage, and kind of implicated in it. So my question to you guys is, if ecological awareness means discovering discovering we are both detective and criminal, what does that do to human identity and responsibility in your view?
Morton basically says that waking up ecologically feels like the moment in a noir film when the detective kind of realizes that he's actually the guy who also did it. That's not just a cool metaphor for me. It's the actual structure of the situation. Like every time you start your car, I think a lot of our classmates in their Padlet posts explore this idea. So every time you start your car, nothing happens, right? Statistically, your individual contribution to the planetary destruction is, close to zero if it's not zero. But if you zoom out to billions of people doing the same thing, and suddenly you're looking at the sixth mass extinction event here, like our collective action is leading to the extinction of the world. So Morton's point here is that once you understand that you are responsible, once you understand that you're part of the problem, it's full stop, right? So that's all responsibility actually requires. You do not get to plead that it's too big or too distributed or that you do not mean it. He actually compares it to using hubris or a legal defense after killing someone in a car accident.
Mm.
Like if you're just an observer, you're actually responsible as well. So it doesn't fly. What's really unsettling here, though, is that what does this idea do to us? To the idea of you, of me, of all of us. The self Morton is describing is not the clean, autonomous individual who gets to make choices and then go home. The human, in his view, is a hyper object. That was a big word that we looked into in this class. Something massively distributed. It's real but impossible to point to directly. So you're part of a species level entity that's become a geophysical force. Whether you like it or not, whether you're thinking about it or not, we're part of it. That's genuinely weird to sit with, right? To consider that one, it's kind of weird. You're an individual person and you're also a component of something that's causing the mass extinction. So
Mm.
both things here are true at the same time, and neither one cancels the other. So Morton's they're trying to make us feel guilty here and then move on. He's saying actually, he's saying that the whole framework of individual agent makes ethical choices too small for what's actually happening here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that point jumped at me. That point jumped at me that week in the reading. And I remember when I posted, Julette commented, and so Rohays, what are you? Are you detective or are you the criminal?
Criminal.
And we're actually both, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we detach ourselves when in fact we are the ones really doing it.
Right. And I think that is what he wants us to understand, that you can't claim ignorance.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like when you turn the keys, nothing happens, you see nothing happen, you still can't claim ignorance, and you can't claim innocence, because every little bit of human activity that impacts the environment in a negative way is gonna have an impact. Well, yeah, whatever it is that you're doing uh in your livelihood, it's gonna affect the environment in a particular way. And I think what he wants us to do, as Kris says, is to wake up and recognize that this whole idea of climate change and the earth, like the lifespan of the earth being shortened, all of that. It's all of our responsibility, and just turning the keys from your cars
I
gonna do some.
remember there was this I don't know who was it who wrote about this, about the red pill and the blue pill a concept in the Padlet. This guy mentioned how you take either one, you take one pill and then you're just living the life being the criminal, I guess, and then you take the other pill and then you wake up in the matrix and know, okay, wow, we're actually responsible for whatever that's happening as well. So there's no perfect way of living. There's deforestation, industrialization. There is so much that's happening. There's fast fashion, makeup. I mean, you name it, that we are not doing things. And I understand the paradox here, right? We're doing something to make our lives easier, make our lives better, but at the same time, we're kind of taking ourselves back into the times when none of it actually even we didn't even have any of this in the beginning. So I wrote about this in my Padlet as well, about the spider web, where the spider moves onto one string, but then the ripple effect is felt onto all the other strings.
Yeah.
So one action kind of affects every other string around it. So
Yeah.
it's hard, honestly. We are the detective or the criminal, but how do
Yeah.
we get out of it though?
So
Um,
basically, responsibility becomes
Yeah,
unavoidable. And I think that is what Mortons want us to understand, is that
yeah,
instead of like placing the blame elsewhere, we need to accept the shared ongoing responsibility for the world that we are shaping with our action. Because even if the actions are small, when it combined with others, it really affects.
yeah, for sure. 100%. Okay, right, let's move on to the next question. I'm guessing this one is going to be our last one. Um, What happens to our relationship with beauty when we accept that nature is not a backdrop, but a mesh of withdrawn, unknowable beings? Ooh, this is deep. Lots of
I think I'll just say briefly here, and then you guys can chime in,
yeah.
is that humans are interconnected with nature.
Mhm.
And we cannot begin to imagine our existence without us being a part of nature. Like, fully I mean, like, if there are no trees, we know what happens. There is no oxygen. I remember watching one time, I don't know if any of you watched that movie, the Bee movie. And this
No.
one girl, she took up it's a cartoon,
Mhm.
but it's animated then. She took up the plight of the bees, saying that it's wrong for the bees to make their honey and humans are eating the honey. And
Mm.
so she lobbied and she went to City Hall and got a law passed that humans should not um, take the honey from the bees. And so there was too much honey, and then the bees stopped making honey because like there was so much, and so they stopped pollinating, because when they move from flower to flower, that's pollination. And so
Mhm.
pollination stopped, and then all the flowers died. And then when all the flowers died, it was just a ripple effect, and then the earth started to die. So I think the whole idea is that we are all interconnected. And I remember in my post that I'd written about the ripple effect and the butterfly effect, that one tiny action just right here um, in Saskatchewan can have just like a humongous effect on something else in Ontario. I remember also reading that uh, like if there's going to be a tsunami, like in one place you will see the water receding,
Mm.
someplace else something else is happening. So the earth, everything is connected, we are connected to it. And the dark part of it is that there's pollution, there
Yeah.
is damage to the atmosphere, the biosphere, all of this. And eventually, if we're not careful, it's gonna damage the human race.
Yeah. And
That's
when
my
we stop seeing nature as a when we stop seeing nature just as a backdrop, right? And we start seeing it something which is more complex, and not fully understandable, I think the idea of beauty changes, right? It's no longer just something nice and just peaceful to look at. It becomes deeper and sometimes even uncomfortable. So when we realize that it's not just there for us, we can't understand it completely. We can't control it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of seeing beauty as a perfect calming, we begin something to calm us down. I think we begin to see things as it being unpredictable and messy and kind of being responsible, like Rohays said as well, being part of
Yeah.
it to make it messy and unpredictable. We're doing quite a bit of a damage there. So I think this makes our relationship with nature should make it more respectful because we
Yeah.
start to see it as something in its own existence and not just something which is there to enjoy, although it
Yeah,
is
not,
to enjoy.
yeah, as you say, not just a backdrop, because
Yeah.
nature can be cruel, because there
Yeah.
are tsunamis and hurricanes and cyclones, and
Yeah. We have
the other
consequences.
day we
Mhm.
suffered so much back in Jamaica.
Yes,
Up
yes, yeah,
the island was a
yeah.
section of the island was decimated. So,
Mhm.
as you were saying, Harira, we have to accept that nature is not just, this backdrop
Yeah.
that's there for
There's a lot
just
more
ooh
going
and
on.
ah over, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if we accept it as what we call it, mesh of unknowable beings, then
Mm.
our experience will also be different. We
Mhm.
will experience it, nature, as a participant within a larger web of relationship and not like we are detached or a detached observer. So our experience will be affected as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess this will go back to like even the first question about ecological awareness, discovering that we are both detective and criminal. Like the both questions will tie in. So once we just no longer see like nature as just a backdrop, just there to be oohed and awed over, then we'll recognize that we have a responsibility. We'll become more ecologically aware of what's happening, and our part, the role that we need to play to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So then it ties back down to what we spoke about in dark ecology. Um, and also I think with all the indigenous ways of being and knowing and how to experience nature, it's kind of confusing where we can get so much out of nature, but then there's also so much that can happen that we do actively to damage it. And there's this constant fight and struggle that goes on between this a weird back and forth that goes on here. Um, do we have any? I think we're out of questions now. We've asked all the questions that we had decided. We had more, but because of the time, we're going to cut it a bit short. Do you guys have anything to say towards the end, as we wrap up this podcast?
Um, I'll just like briefly say that coming away from this course has been an eye opener for me. You know, when I saw dark ecology, and I was like, why am I studying this? But then when I got into the content of it and saw what the writers are really trying to impart, then I could relate to nature, to see how it is that from his point of view nature is being destroyed, and so we all have a role to play to ensure that there is continuity. And so ultimately for me as an educator, I'm open, you know open. My mind is more opened. I have come away with so much more. Teaching learning experience for me cannot be the same after having gone through all of these courses: walking pedagogy, beading, just being more ecologically aware, aesthetics and aesthetical encounters. Yes, so I've been challenged to look at learning differently. Yeah.
Yeah, Juliet and
Yeah.
I agree with you. Leaving this course, it has really taught me to be accepting because with beading at the beginning, I was sort of hesitant to try it. I was not interested, but I allowed myself to be accepting of it, which I tried, and eventually I love it. So, yeah, I appreciate this course.
Kris.
Oh, first thing is that when we talk about the environment and aesthetics, I think the big key takeaway from me, not just from this podcast, but from the whole course is that all of us have individual responsibilities, and at the same time, we do have collective responsibilities. I will not explore it. I will not explain it further, but just a final word here. Something that I shared with everybody, like in our class, we are in this together. We walk this path together, and I'm just thankful for the three of you for walking this path with me, helping me understand so many things that I alone cannot understand because, again, my thinking is limited, my understanding is limited. So, thank you for this opportunity, and also thank you, Jesse, for allowing us to complete this work as a group. We started together, we'll end this together as well.
Touch and be touched.
Touch
Yeah,
can
there you
be
go.
touched.
Thank you so much, Rohays, Kris, Julette. It's been such an amazing experience. Even this podcast, it went so much smoother than I thought, compared to our last semester. But this one has been good. I think Jesse's class, as usual, even in the last semester in spring, I believe, um, the readings were quite challenging, but the discussions that came out of it were just so wonderful, right? It all made
Yes,
sense. And the
You're
same
yes.
very
thing happened this
rich.
time. And we also, although there were some things that I wish we had more time to get into, like death pedagogy, I think super, super interesting. We
Mhm.
spoke a lot about ghosts and dreams, which was, I was like, hang on a second, are we getting off topic? But then I remember Jesse said that's the whole point.
Right.
We can't get off topic. So with that, we're gonna wrap up our last project of the semester. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here. It was wonderful. Always amazing doing this for Jesse's class. Thank you, and have a great rest of the evening.